You're watching NewsX. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived in Moscow for a two-day visit where he will meet Russian President Vladimir Putin and hold talks with him over a range of issues. Moscow's Ostankino Tower was also lit up with the Tiranga. This is Prime Minister Modi's first visit to Russia in nearly 5 years. PM Modi, who boarded a flight from Delhi at 10:30 a.m. today, arrived at the Vnukovo International Airport in Moscow around 5:10 p.m. He was received by the first Deputy Prime Minister of Russia, Denis Manturov, and was also given a guard of honor. In a rare gesture, Manturov also accompanied the PM to the hotel from the airport in the same car. Speaking about his visit to Russia, the Prime Minister said the special and privileged strategic partnership between India and Russia has advanced over the past 10 years, including in the areas of energy, security, trade, investment, health, education, culture, tourism, and people-to-people exchanges. He also mentioned that he looks forward to reviewing all aspects of bilateral cooperation with President Vladimir Putin and also sharing perspectives with him on various regional and global issues. The Prime Minister also called Putin a very good friend. Joining us at this point is Ben Aris, Editor-in-Chief, BNE, and former Moscow Bureau Chief for the Daily Telegraph. Rajiv Nayan, Senior Research Associate, MP, IDSA, is also live with us. Bhashwati Mukherjee, former diplomat, joins us live. Madhav Nalapat, Editorial Director of the Sunday Guardian, is live with us. Dr. Sharat Kohli, economist, also joins the broadcast. Let me make a start with you first, Ben, on your expectations from this visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Russia. What do you believe will come of it?
I think it'll be a very fruitful visit, that the relationships between India and Russia are long-standing, but the way the world is changing with the rise of all the emerging markets, the rest of the world, the global south, whatever you want to call it, we're seeing greater amount of cooperation between the likes of India, Russia, China, as they have common economic interests and also security. That the world, the Western world, has treated the global south as a second-class citizen for a long time, and yet now those economies are the ones that are growing. They represent the bulk of the global population, and also in adjusted terms, that collectively they're more valuable than the West. And so they have a lot of details, lots of practical issues to deal with concerning energy, trade, agriculture, but then again also the security issues. And India is increasingly looking like the grown-up in the room, because obviously there's lots of tensions now, but India is one of the few countries, particularly within the group, the BRICS group, that actually maintains good relations with both the West and the East, and that's to be welcomed. And I'm hoping that Modi will play a placating role here and actually bring the conflict in Europe to an end, and at the same time ensure better security globally for the rest of us, because we're in bad need of that at the moment.
Rajiv Nayan, what all will be on the table during this bilateral meeting between Modi and Putin? The first, of course, in Moscow in over 5 years.
Look, the Foreign Secretary of India very clearly, explicitly stated that there are many issues which will be discussed, and he was quite clear about that. And one of the issues is about the Indians who have been misled to fight a war, a Russian war. So definitely Prime Minister is going to raise this issue with President Putin. Apart from that, India is also going to discuss the gap in the bilateral trade, the grand deficit which is existing in the bilateral trade between the two countries. India's in fact export is just stagnating around $4 to $5 billion, and Russians export to India is more than $61 billion. So this is one big gap which they are finding, that we have to think about that. But no doubt there are reasons for that, and energy security and the way India and Russia have entered into this pact could be one possible reason for this gap. And there are many other reasons, but at least the gaps need to be discussed. Apart from that, we are expecting that the two leaders will be discussing, as everyone is expecting, about the Ukrainian other issues, global security, and how they can take it forward. And in fact, many are expecting that India may carry the message of peace. And it may be subdued. It is not so much generally projected. It is being played down, but definitely the last meeting, Indian Prime Minister had stated, and that became very popular, that this is not an era of war. So I am sure that Indian Prime Minister will talk about that. That is for stability of not only the region but also of the world, and for international trade, for general development of mankind, plus science and technology cooperation. We have to somehow think about ending the conflict, and without somehow hampering Russian interest. We have to appreciate Russian sensitivity, Russian interest, and can we find a solution to it? So this will be a big issue for India. This is not very much discussed in the public domain, but we are expecting, and the world is also expecting, that a quiet diplomacy may take place, at least on this front. There is a long list we can talk about, because Russia is a time-tested friend. So, and the relationship is multidimensional, quite comprehensive in nature, and ranging from security to science and technology cooperation. And the way Russia is reviving its old science and technology base. So we all expect that, yeah, so we can have cooperation, but obviously for this conflict has to end. So this is what I think that we are expecting.
Right. Let me, take that to Ambassador Mukherjee as well. Ambassador Mukherjee, a lot, of course, on the table, from energy cooperation to, of course, trade ties. Which are the particular areas of our relationship which, are likely to get a boost with this visit by Prime Minister Narendra Modi?
In my perspective, the most important is energy cooperation. That is actually how we've been able to trade off the possible impact of a large Indian economy emerging from the pandemic. It shielded it from the impact of unilateral Western sanctions. And in the process, actually helped the West, who have bought Russian oil from us under rules which the European Union themselves has established. So, energy security I would put right on the top of the list. I would also put the fact that India is doing a very careful balancing act. It's sending a clear message to the West, who have actually gone back to their earlier approach of hectoring, patronizing, pointing out what's wrong with us, negative narratives, which had gone down in the past. It came up very sharply during the election campaign. The message which the Indian Prime Minister is taking by making his first foreign visit to Moscow is that we are doing a balancing act. We are an emerging power. We are too big to be smacked on the head and put in the corner anymore. We are a major power. I don't agree with my co-panelist who says that we are going to be discussing Ukraine secretly or otherwise. Ukraine cannot be resolved until the West understands that Russia will not give up territory that it has taken from Ukraine at the cost of thousands of Russian soldiers. The West did a peace conference in Switzerland without Russia, to which India did not send a very high-level representative. We were represented at the level of Secretary West, who is a Russian-speaking officer, but he was not a minister. So I don't see Ukraine on the agenda at all, because there is no point in discussing a treaty arrangement with Putin, where Putin is being told to give up territory and go back to where he was. He's not going to do that. So why should we poke our nose into a situation which will only worsen our bilateral relationship? It is for the West to understand that Russia is a European power, that Russia is going nowhere. The West keeps telling us India should not forget its geography. I always say the West should not forget its geography either. They have to learn to live with Russia, and they have to understand that their policy of unilateral sanctions is pushing Russia into China's arms and making Russia a junior ally of China. Is that what the West wants for international peace and security? Well, I don't know that, but that's not what India wants. So that's another important reason is for India to demonstrate to President Putin that we are also a time-tested friend and we don't want Russia in the arms of the Chinese dragon. We would like Russia to be autonomous, to be strong, and to be able to play a role in a multipolar world that has been severely damaged by the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So I would say our first priority is therefore energy, security, balancing act, and sending a clear message to our strategic partners in the West that they can't have it both ways. They can't expect us to play their game and at the same time lecture and hector us, are we democratic, do we have enough rule of law in India, etc. So I think on the whole, the message will be delivered, and no, there is no Ukraine on the table that I can think of today.
You know, the West is looking at this meeting very, very closely, Professor Nalapat, as would be China. And India has perfected the art of balance, which we perhaps will continue to do so. All eyes on this meeting. What will be the West and the Chinese looking for?
Well, the Chinese would look for any kind of a split between India and the West. And frankly, a large number of voices, which Ambassador was referring to, which are talking absolute rubbish about the situation in India, such as that India is not a democracy. And it just this is much before, of course, it just conducted the largest ever democratic exercise in the world successfully. So, yes, there is definitely, the issues with the West. But don't forget, Uday, Prime Minister Modi got all the 4 Defense Foundation agreements signed, Security Foundation agreements. He has put India in the Quad. So India is very, very clear where the threat comes from. And that threat comes from a country that is a security partner, not of India, but of forces hostile to India, which is China. So, definitely one point, I think Prime Minister Modi has made it very clear to the West that, look, we are not Japan or Germany or the UK, that you tell us what to do and we just blindly follow. We are India. We are our own country. We'll take our own decisions. As far as we are concerned about the Indo-Pacific. We are concerned about the Eurasian continent. And frankly, we are not going to be involved just because you say we should do something. We're not going to be involved in that. At the same time, I'm sure Vladimir Putin also knows by now that India and the West are definitely close to each other. And irrespective of these, if I may say so, these are unpleasant noises that are emanating from some of the Western countries about India. So that's the most important. So in my view, it's not defense that's going to take front and center. It's resources. Russia has half of Europe, half of Asia, and Europe has cut itself off from Russian resources. Europe has shot itself in the foot economically. I mean, if any one of our guests is from the UK, he'll know what inflation the UK is going through. He'll know what economic pain the rest of the, of Western Europe is going through. But unfortunately, very few Western people connect that with the Ukraine war and the sanctions they've imposed, which have damaged their own currencies and completely disrupted supply chains, nor the impact, for example, of COVID, which is lab created in China. So that's one very important issue, I think. Energy, as the ambassador was saying. Second will be the rupee-ruble trade. Prime Minister Modi has shown himself to be a strong and reliable partner of Russia in good times and bad. Yes, Russia is unfortunately by default getting closer to China. Another favor that the West has done China, hopefully not intentionally, but one of the many favors it has done unintentionally to help the growth of Xi Jinping's China. Definitely, I would like to say that, it is very, very clear that energy is going to be important and very important, the rupee-ruble trade. Now, why is it that still the Russians are dithering on basically accepting payment in rupees? when we are ready to accept payment in rubles. The point is that the Chinese are putting pressure on them. They don't want Indian goods to be exported more than what they are now to Russia, for fear that their goods will then be overtaken, which they will. And they certainly don't want the Indian currency to gain strength by having a deal like, for example, Russia and Iran signed, in which each other's currencies are linked to each other. So I do believe our Russian President Putin will, of course, show that he is nobody's, puppet. Russia is not second to anybody. It's a great power in its own right. Therefore, there will be a rupee-ruble trade, and then you will have Russian investment in India and Russian purchases in India from India. India has got so many things it can export to Russia. India has got such a lot of abundant brain power in which Russian companies can set up factories here that can export to Russia and other parts of the world. So frankly, it's the Chinese that are holding back the Russians from that kind of thing. It's the Chinese that are holding back the Russians from a real rupee-ruble trade deal. And Prime Minister Modi has shown he has the courage to walk the talk with the United States. I'm sure President Putin will show that he has the courage to walk the talk with Xi Jinping and agree to full rupee-ruble trade and to vastly expanding the Russian imports from India and but in payment in rupees, which can then be used for investment in India or wherever else rupees can be used. There are many important parts of the world. So I think these two important points, energy and the trade deficit, are going to be front and center of Prime Minister Modi's dialogue. As I said, India has shown itself to be an all-weather friend. And we expect Vladimir Putin, at least I expect as a non-governmental academic, to show a similar independence of mind and ensure that the financial relationship with India is normalized in the way that it ought to have been, 2 years ago. Thank you.
Yes. Sharad Kohli, do you see the shadow of the war hanging on this meeting, given the fact that this is the first visit by Prime Minister Narendra Modi post the Russian-Ukraine conflict? And where do you see India-Russia energy and economic partnership headed post this visit?
Well, good evening, Uday. Good evening to my fellow panelists and the NewsX viewers. I think respecting what Ambassador said, that probably Ukraine may not be on the table. I don't disagree with her, but at the same time, India as an ambassador of peace, and India did make some attempts. There was a phone call, if you remember, a lot of politics around that. Prime Minister called and he tried to stop the war and so on. So India as an ambassador of peace would always say that peace should prevail. I think a general statement on peace should prevail would of course be on the table, if not by the name Ukraine. That is what I feel, although I'm not a diplomatic expert. But then knowing India's history of decades of being ambassador of peace, I think that will still be on the table, if not by the name of Ukraine. That's my first statement. On the economic front, as I agree with Professor Nalapat that, rupee-ruble trade, because it's a very skewed trade relationship right now. It's all due to energy imports, due to oil imports, because from the time the war started, the sanctions were imposed, thousands and thousands of sanctions on Russia. And Russia is very happy with the fact that India has been one major country which has ignored the sanctions of the West. It has not succumbed to the pressure of the West by treating Russia in a different way. India has been as good a friend with Russia as it was before, ignoring and completely disrespecting the sanctions which were imposed, that we will have our own relations. That was India's message. And this is a new Indian diplomatic methodology, I would say, and I'm sure Ambassador knows this better than anybody of us, that this is the new India which has emerged, which doesn't bother really. We are not standing with folded hands. We will do as you say. I'm sorry, that is not India anymore. Now, rupee-ruble trade with Professor Nalapat raised, I would like to make a very quick point. We have around $41 billion of trade deficit with Russia. And what has happened, for the benefit of NewsX viewers, there's a Nostro account which a Russian bank opens in India. And the Russian exporters, they keep collecting the money in rupee. So what happened was we've got about $4 to $5 billion of export with Russia and about $41 odd billion of import. Although we are not getting concessional oil as we were getting before. The discount is far less, almost negligible now. But a lot of rupee accumulated. So the Russian exporters started asking, what are we going to do with these rupees? We've got a truckload of rupees accumulated. So India suggested various methods. You can make investments. You can probably keep it. Then finally, some settlements were made in UAE dirhams for the NewsX viewers who follow international economic news. That is how the trade was settled. So I think that is going to be on the table. A solution to this could be that to the extent of where we can match the export with import, I think at least that rupee ruble should be there. Some margin should be left for Russian investments. I think India is a fantastic place right now. And for Russia, there were a lot of Russians, Uday, who were investing in Europe earlier. Now with the sanctions being in place, those investments are not finding the destination of Europe. So India cannot be a better, there cannot be a better place than India. India now is an economic superpower. Russia is the biggest country in the world, a country which has more than 6,000 nuclear heads. And India is the largest democracy in the world, is an emerging economic superpower. And the various initiatives that government of India has undertaken, I'm sure Prime Minister Modi is going to lay the red carpet for the businessmen of Russia. Come and invest in India. Taste India. You've been tasting Europe for all your life. And look what Europe has done for you. You've got thousands and thousands of sanctions on you. Here is an old friend of yours for decades now. Come and invest here. We are no more the country we were at the time of Nehru. We are totally a different country now, a very investor-friendly country. And I think that is going to be on the table irrespective of anything that happens, because Prime Minister Modi never misses out an opportunity to convey to the country that please come and invest. This is the country where you can make money. We've got plenty of skill, plenty of people, and the best, we've got the best market in the world. We should not forget Russia is a vast country, a population of about 13 crore, but spread geographically from left to right. So effectively, the country doesn't seem to be populated, which becomes a problem for the companies to find a market. Here is a country which has got a beautiful market for you to tap. Apart from that, energy security, as was rightly stated, I think international geopolitics is going to be on the agenda. We see the world getting divided into 2 or 3 portions. There is the Western group, there is the China-Russia closeness, which is gradually emerging, and there is a third group. And India is the largest country which is now playing neutral. It is friends with Russia, friends with America. And I think President Putin is simply liking that. He's loving that there is at least one share country, one lion country, which doesn't really care about the comments or strictures being made by the Western countries, because there is hypocrisy there. They are themselves importing oil through various channels, and they are asking other countries not to do. I've got on record where France, Germany, and some of the other countries have been found to be importing oil in a quasi manner, in a disguised manner. So I think the West has got no right to comment on India for that matter. I think it's going to be a very fruitful visit, and somebody is going to remember this visit for a lifetime. God forbid if a world war happens. We keep hearing about World War III more often than not these days. I heard some politicians speaking negatively about this visit, that Prime Minister is not going to Manipur, he is going to Russia, and all that narrative is being built. I think they will probably remember this visit for a very, very long time, because you don't even know how Russia can come in support of India in many ways. Uday.
All right. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us on this discussion.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.